Hey guys, we are going to do a different video today. We're going to start practicing some test taking strategies. And I really don't like teaching to the test, if you've ever heard that phrase before, but that's not really what I'm going for here. What I'm going for is just some strategies that can help you in any testing situation in life. The reality is we test a lot, and it happens not just for students like kids, but it's happening for adults too. Almost any job position you can think of these days has some sort of test connected to it. I mean, if you've noticed, there's actually testing centers that adults go to on a regular basis to get certification in their area. So the reality is no matter what options you end up choosing for a career or a job, you're most likely going to have to do some sort of certification or some sort of test. And in our day and age, that's all electronic, it's all online. So I think where a lot of people struggle is not knowing the material. A lot of people really do understand the concepts that they're being tested on. It's understanding how to read the test and how to work through it and how to deal with reading it on a screen. I think that's where a lot of people struggle. So I hear a lot of students tell me I'm not a good test taker. Well, what that tells me is that you need to work on testing strategies. It's not that you don't know the math or you don't know the concept you're being tested on. It's you don't know how to read the problem and figure out what it wants. And to be honest, that's half of test taking skills right there. If you can figure out how to read the problem and figure out what it wants, then you're good to go. So we're going to practice. I'm going to make some practice videos here, and this is one of our first ones. And you'll see I have a side-by-side screen here. The graph paper is what I would have as my scratch paper. So if I'm doing any kind of online testing where I'm looking at a screen, I've got my scratch paper where I can actually use my pencil and kind of work the problem out. Next to my graph paper, I have an example test question. I'll blow it up and make it a little bigger for you. So this would be what's on my computer screen. And then down below is a spot where I can type in my answer. So let's look at this question together and kind of analyze it and practice how we would use our scratch paper. So first off, some of the things I'm kind of noticing is that it says there's a graph, and it says cost of gasoline. So maybe the first thing I would do on my scratch paper is I don't really know what's going on in this problem yet, but we're dealing with the cost of gasoline. So I'm just going to jot that down, something I can write down from the problem. And then I'm probably just going to take a moment to read it. So let's read this problem. It says, this graph shows a proportional relationship between the number of gallons of gasoline used, G, and the total cost of gasoline, C. It's possible I just read that sentence and it all just went over your head. So we got to go back and maybe reread. The graph shows a proportional relationship between number of gallons of gasoline used. Oh my gosh, we better write some of this down. So let's do a little writing and see what we think about this. So gallons of gasoline used. So G is our variable, and it's gallons of gasoline. I'm just going to write gallons of gas used. That sounds like a variable. Let's write that down. Okay, we got that part. Now let's look at the rest of it. So between the number of gallons of gasoline used and the total cost of gasoline, C. Total cost of gasoline. So that means C is the cost of gas. That was a really complicated sentence for just saying G is the gallons and C is the cost. So I think we kind of narrowed this down and figured out the basic facts now. Now maybe we should read the question that's down at the bottom down here. So down at the bottom it says, find the constant of proportionality, R. Using the value R, enter the equation in the form C equals RG that represents the relationship between the number of gallons of gasoline used, G, and the total cost, C. As I'm reading that, it sounds like a different language, so I'm going to try to pull out what's important to me. Find the constant of proportionality, R. Okay, so they want us to find R. We're supposed to find R. This is one thing I'm supposed to do. I'm just writing down things that I think are important. And then using the value of R, enter an equation in the form C equals RG. C equals RG. Enter an equation. So our job is to type in this equation, and we're supposed to find R. That's what we're supposed to do. Okay, well, let's work with this a little bit more then. So I think we better analyze our graph a little bit. So let's look at the graph. So the graph is the graph of cost of gasoline. And I see a line. I see down on the x-axis that it's got some different labels. Do you see the different labels? Watch, I'm gonna grab a pen here. It's labeled G and C. Oh, so instead of using the traditional XY axis, we're not doing an XY axis, we're using G and C. That seems pretty important. Why don't we write that down? Take those red dots off. So I'll draw a little tiny little XY axis, but instead of X, we're using G. And instead of Y axis, we're using C. Okay, all right. So usually I'm used to writing equations for lines. If it's in a line, I'm used to writing y equals mx plus b. That's what I'm used to doing. But this time, I think they're telling me I have to change the y to a c equals m, and I don't think it's x, I think it's g. So it's g plus b. Oh my gosh, this is confusing for my brain. It's all new variables, but it's still the same thing. It's still y equals mx plus b. It's still a line. It's just x and y are now c and g and c. That's all it is that we've changed. So, okay, that helps me out a little bit. Let's go back to looking at this thing full screen again. So where are our points? Well, it looks like it starts at 0. So our y-intercept is 0. So I guess we know our b value. 0. And if you look at all these points it's growing, we're going to have to figure out what it's growing by. Shoot, this might be a little challenging. I'm going to grab my pen here. So we see that it starts at 0. We need to find some solid points. Here's a solid point right here. Do you guys see that? I have to get pretty close. I'm like squinting at my screen here, but it looks like it's at 9 and 30. Unfortunately, I'm drawing it on here, but you can't draw if it's on the computer. So what am I going to do? I see it on my page. I'm going to write it down at 9 and 30. So I'll get that off the screen. I'm going to write down that there is a point at 9 and 30. Meaning over here on my line, there's a point at 9 and 30. Okay, so how is this going to help me? Well, if it starts at 0, and we know that we're supposed to find y equals mx plus b, it looks like it goes up 30 over 9. It looks like it has a growth of 30 over 9. Now 9 doesn't fit into 30 evenly, does it? 30/9. So what I'm going to do is say that this R value, this growth rate that we're trying to find, is going up $30 on the C, on the cost, so it costs $30 to go over 9 gallons. Can I reduce 30/9? I guess I could. I could divide by 3, huh? Let's reduce it down. 30 divided by 3 would be 10. 9 divided by 3 would be 3. So I can reduce it down to 10/3. That's my growth number. Meaning every time I spend $10, I'm getting 3 gallons of gas. Let's see if that makes sense on the graph here. If I look at the graph, so every time I spend $10, so I'm going to go up $10 with my finger on the graph and go over. Is that 3 gallons of gas? Yes, it is. Look, right there. So if I spend $10, I get 3 gallons of gas. Watch, I'm going to spend another $10. So if I'm going to go up to 20 and over. Now I'm at 6 gallons of gas. Oh yeah, that's what it's doing. Go up $10 and over. Now I'm at the 9 that we started with, the first point that we used to help us. Okay, all right, well that helps me out. So now what can I write down? Well, I think I'm ready to get my answer, to be honest. This is going to be my answer. If my R value is, what's my growth? It's 10/3. So my R value is 10/3. Then I already know my equation. It is C equals 10/3 G. And that's it. There's nothing more I can do. So when I go to type in my answer, I'm going to type in C equals 10/3 G. And that'll be it. So I better box that. So notice my notes aren't extremely neat and nice, but I had to like really pull things out of the problem and really think about it. And honestly, the most challenging part for me was just wrapping my head around the graph and realizing that, hey, The XY axis that I'm used to is still there, it's just called G and C. So my whole concept of y equals mx plus b, I still know that, I just had to change it to C equals mg plus b. Confusing, huh? But once we kind of read it and worked through it, we figured it out. We got that equation, so there it is, there's our equation. So, all right, thanks for practicing this problem, guys. Your takeaway is read slowly, pull things out of the problem that you know, write them down, and really just think about what is the question asking. And that takes time and practice, so we're going to do more videos like this. Thanks, guys. Bye.